So is there a latent racism in all this?
Towards white people?
No, in the attitudes of the white people you're describing.
It's hard to say. I mean, it's confusing to say exactly what type of racism it is, right? Because it's not. I mean, you get this sense that racism is fundamentally about sort of, Ku Klux Klan and Nazis and about this outward hatred.
Yes.
Whereas I think what some of the racism that's coming out of this is that these white people who've grown up in these white environments are sort of trying to accrue all of these friends from different cultures, and they care.
That's kind of what I mean.
And they care more that they're from the culture than who the person is.
Yes.
Right? And they're unwilling to confront certain facts about people, like you're Egyptian. You could be an asshole for all. You've been really nice so far, right? But some white people
wait till the cameras.
Okay, perfect. But some white people would be too afraid to say anything negative because they feel like it might be perceived as racist just because of this, this dominant race structure.
You're right.
And there's a problem in that, right? Because then you are doing the same thing where you're not seeing beyond race to the person behind it.
Yeah.
And whether or not you're seeing that in a positive way, saying, I love this race, the hug is around the race while the person is still out here, right?
Yeah.
Sort of the same as punching the race while the person's still out, It's similar in that capacity. And so I think that there is some racism about this fetishization of sort of trying to create a multiculturalism that maybe isn't there. And so I think that there is an element of racism to it, absolutely. And I try and point that out that, you are holding up this culture. So it's like for white people on vacation when they travel.
Yeah.
There's a belief that you want to keep these countries. I mean, you don't want to go to Africa and see, high-rise buildings in progress. You want to see the Africa of the Victorian travel writers.
Right.
You want these countries to remain as sort of ethnically pure as possible so that they can retain this culture that you feel you don't have, that you want to participate.
Right.
Shit, all right. Can you edit out these quotes? Because I feel like such a jerk doing this.
Is that a white person?
Yeah, it is. And that's why I'm trying to get rid of them.
All right.
But it's that same thing of you want these cultures to remain in this cultural way. You don't want to see a McDonald's in Thailand, right? You want everyone to be eating proper Thai food.
The world becomes a collection of artifacts.
Exactly.
To this imagined world.
And you share this belief that somehow the world would be better if everyone was, rural peasants forever. You know what I mean? Engaging in this wonderful former world of what it used to be. And there's a racism to that. You know what I mean? They're trying to hold up this culture that you don't want to evolve, that you will not allow to change because you want to have a nice place to have a vacation or you want new Buddha statues for your home.
Right. But at the same time, isn't there also a desire to see cultures evolve in line with the sensibilities of this clique?
Well, I mean, you want these cultures to evolve within this new country.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And saying, so you obviously don't want to see people from a rural part of China start raising pigs in the middle of Melbourne. That's not what you're looking for. You want that to grow within your country, but you're still trying to hold these other countries for this international travel to try and retain this romantic, I'm the first white person to ever see this notion.
Yeah.
And there's a definite racism to that.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm getting at is the question of retain your culture, but at the same time conform with this human rights convention. I mean, isn't there that sort of... I guess there's a contradiction, isn't there, between that sort of almost, like you've described it, this fetishization of cultural self-determination to the point of view where I will determine for you what your self-determination should look like.
Evidently, white people love knowing what's best for poor people.
Yes.
That's on the list.
Yeah, okay. So there's that on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's also a belief in kind of a universal moral or ethical code.
Yes, of course.
That therefore applies.
And and there's a belief that their pressing of this belief on another culture is less racist than, say, an imperialist. But, forcing this belief on another culture. Sort of trying to imply everything should sort of be this left, everything should be Sweden. And don't get me wrong, I love Sweden. But trying to apply a Swedish structure to, Mongolia or wherever, it may not work. And so you can't necessarily always employ, Western moral codes on these new countries. And that, quite frankly, bothers a lot of white people.
Do you think this kind of latent racism that you've identified, is it ever possible to overcome that?
It's hard. I'm not going to, it's really hard. And I think, I'd like to publicly declare I'm not racist. I mean, I got a camera, I got a forum to say it, which is great. But I think...
And you must have non-white friends. You got a Filipino.
I do. There's one.
Friend.
Boom.
Yeah.
Soon to be two.
Really?
Yeah, bam, right there. No, so, I think what I had, what I was fortunate enough to have, and again, this is really the benefit of growing up in Toronto, was that I grew up in a city with people from all over the world. And it was in my neighborhood, and it was from the time I was a really small kid. And so it was hard. It was harder for me to understand racism because, as children, obviously, you see people first, and you could really care less about what their race is afterwards. And I guess because in Canada, and especially in Toronto at least, though it was really strange. My family has this long 200-year history in that area, but I feel no entitlement to the city. And Toronto as a city really doesn't feel that this is our land, we need to protect it from outsiders and all that. It doesn't really exist so much there. So I was really lucky.
Is it a bit like New York?
A little bit. It is different, though. It's hard to say what it is. New York has a much longer history, a richer history of sort of. And New York's immigration history is really interesting because it's about whites, Germans, and Italians coming over as foreign and then becoming white over the course of time. Whereas Toronto was really just like a white British outpost until like 1960s. And then massive immigrations coming from everywhere, from Asia, South America, but the majority, China, India, and Sri Lanka and so. But I grew up with kids from all over the world, and I think it's hard if you didn't grow up like that, you know what I mean, to get it. And so I had this group of friends, and again, not to brag, like, look how many ethnic friends I have, but among all of us, when we would hang out, ethnic slurs would fly left and right towards each other.
Right.
But there was no problem with it because there was no malice behind any of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that was a sign that we were over it.
Was it that everyone was an insider?
It was that everyone knew each other well enough, and they knew their intentions well enough, that you could say literally whatever you wanted, no matter how offensive, and no one would be hurt because it was, you knew there was no real malice behind it.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
It has a lot to do with power, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that you can't have a white stand-up comic doing a whole lot of black person jokes.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can have the reverse.
Absolutely. And the reason is, same with my book, white people are in first place.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. That's the easiest way to put it.
So you can laugh at it.
Yeah, of course.
And, you got me, now shine my shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing.
Exactly. It's like, oh, you know what? You're right. You burned me. Now I have to go have an expensive dinner and enjoy the rest of this beachfront property. Goodbye. Have fun in your slum.
It's the only way I can.
Exactly. I mean, look, and yeah, it definitely comes from a position of power that makes white people not. And the word isn't vulnerable at all. It's not vulnerable. It's like yes, And the funny thing is, you're even to the point where white people are like, yes, please criticize me. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong. How can I atone for my sins? Is there some sort of ethnic rosary that I can say that will absolve me of all of my relative sins? And so. It's hard to say what it is. We're getting to a point where it's not so simple. And so you think about the United States in the 60s, it was relatively simple. Blacks couldn't vote. I mean, there were all these institutionalized laws, of South Africa, institutionalized, even Australia, institutionalized racism. That was an easy fight to fight.
Yeah.
And now that it's off the books and you're really dealing with people's hearts and minds, it is a much bigger challenge, and there's no doubt about it.
But what you've identified is that it's not just about trying to win people's hearts and minds, because this is operating at a kind of subterranean level. There's something almost unconscious about this.
Yeah.
How do you possibly deal with that?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, it comes down to you have to be lucky enough to get to understand people, to grow up together, with people, and to learn to see beyond race. And it's hard. It's not easy to do. And I really wish I had the solution to it, because solution is, hey, everyone grow up in Toronto in the 1980s. No problem. That'll fix everything, right?
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, no problem. Just live on my street. Everything will be fine. Of course, my street now is completely gentrified. It's only white people now.
Right.
And we were there early, right? So we're pretty awesome.
You're authentic.
Yeah, we bought in way early, right? So we're way cool now.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say what it is. And I think what makes it really difficult to say is it comes through childhood. And unfortunately, at least in the United States and a lot of Western countries, that opportunity is quickly fading as public schools are starting to crumble and people are moving more towards this private model. And what I'm also seeing, at least in Canada, is that certain races are definitely combining together in a more comfortable way. So, for example, white people and Asians. In Canada, specifically, the race, that there is no tension. Or it's a very mild tension.
Why is that?
It's an issue of wealth.
Right.
Definitely in Canada.
So again, this is a class issue.
It's definitely a class issue.
It's not ultimately a race issue.
I think
it just expresses itself
race still
often
matters.
through race.
Race still matters. It does. And when I say no tension, I mean, I say that relatively. There is tension. There is tension of Asian males being looked upon as sort of super submissive and completely passive. And there's a racism in there, an inherent racism. But the tensions are a lot less because the class is the same.
Yes.
And I think that to bring everyone into the same class is going to be a huge challenge again as well. But that is a huge part of it. And so as things are separating, you're sort of seeing that Asians and whites are going to the same private schools. The tensions are easing a little bit, but the class is staying the same.
But isn't the problem that the Asian kids always do better than the white kids?
We're fine with that.
You okay with it?
Well, we got big inheritances, right?
Right.
We got nothing to worry about. I think
in a couple of generations there might be a problem, though.
It might. Well, I mean, you have that in the U.S., right? So the U.S. there's a number of universities where they will, in affirmative action, will give preferences to underrepresented minorities at that university.
Yep.
Asians no longer count as a minority when you're dealing with applications.
Yep.
And so that says something about not only assimilation but sort of class as well. And so I think that's
it's a common pattern, though, that spans ethnic borders, because generally speaking, the children of migrants do better at school than the children of non-migrants.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So isn't there's something more to do with social dynamics than there is to do with particular culture?
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I saw what I saw really interesting. So again, my high school drew from a number of different neighborhoods in Toronto. So it was a public high school. It was district. So in Toronto, you can choose whichever high school you want to go to.
Yep.
If you don't like the first one, you're forced to go to your district high school, right?
Right.
So my district high school included Riverdale, which was sort of the white middle class where I came from, and then Regent Park, which was public housing, Cabbagetown, which was middle class, Rosedale, which was the richest neighborhood in the city, and Jamestown, which was essentially all brand new immigrants to Canada.
Right.
And so what was really interesting was seeing the kids from Regent Park, the housing project. There were white kids there, poor white kids, who were 4 generations deep in that project. The majority of new migrants to the country, kids coming from Somalia, Sri Lanka, India, 1 generation and out. And that's something that was really interesting. And there is a tension there coming from sort of these poor whites who've been poor whites for 4 generations, and migrants are out in 1 generation. I mean, there's a tension there, but they're joining that class. But again, trying to use Toronto as an example, I feel like such a homer here and trying to say, look how great Toronto is. I mean, we have our problems, obviously, but to see that.
Well, if you like it so much, you can go back to your
There
own
we go. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
That's actually the greatest thing anyone could ever say. If you like this country so much, go back to
Go back to your own country. Given that you've admitted this is an autobiographical book and website, and given that you've said a lot of this comes from, I guess, suppressed feelings of white guilt.
It's not suppressed. It's outright.
Okay,
I'm very aware of this.
Even better.
I just want to apologize to everybody out there.
Can I join the dots here?
Yeah.
How cathartic is this for you?
Oh, it's been fantastic.
It's a form of therapy.
Here's the problem, though. It's been cathartic, and you think sort of after a catharsis you can change.
It's not going to happen?
No. I mean, look, man, I wrote a post about how stupid it is to be snobby about indie rock. That's not changing anytime soon. Let's be realistic. That's not changing anytime soon.
I would have thought, why?
Look, man, I have to be number one. That's all there is to it.
Right.
I have to be reminded that my taste in music are better than everyone else's. And I know how stupid that is.
Yeah,
no,
I have this problem too, because I'm very much a music snob. Yeah. But what is it that compels someone to... Why would you be snobby about music?
Because I can't do it. Because I suck. I don't know what it is.
No, but musicians are equally...
It's about... It's so hard to say what it is. There's a competitive drive in human nature.
Yeah.
I mean, it explains so much of it. And it's kind of ridiculous that I wish I could funnel this competitive drive into curing cancer.
Yeah.
Instead, I funnel into reading music blogs and trying to be this much further ahead of my friends.
Right.
But it's still there. You want to beat your neighbor.
Is it ultimately because it's easiest to have a contest about something that doesn't matter?
Yeah. Because losing is relatively inconsequential.
Yeah, it doesn't feel it though.
I know, it still stings, but at the end of the day, you still have both arms.
Let's use this white people paradigm. Explain, how would you use it to explain the Barack Obama phenomenon?
Well, it's tough to explain what the phenomenon is. I mean, on one level, without a doubt in the United States, a lot of people projected their own beliefs on Barack Obama without listening to what he was saying. They loved what he stood for more than what he actually was. So you'd be surprised at the number of people who didn't listen to Barack Obama when he said that he does not support gay marriage. He supports civil unions. And he said that outright. Most people would have no idea that he said it. They were too busy listening to the music, putting up the posters, the stickers. Yeah. They loved the idea more so than the man.
Yeah.
And so I think that it was amazing. It's an incredible thing is what can happen with this hype, that went along with it. Now, look, I think he's fantastic. I'm very happy that he's president.
Of course you do, but that's my question. What does Barack Obama mean to white people?
I think he means, well, he's halfway, right? So, we're still there.
Well, the fact that he's called a black president indicates that white's the norm.
Well, there's also in the United States, there's also another issue, is that if his last name was Jackson or Washington or Jefferson, would he have been president? What do you think? Probably not.
Why?
Well, look, he is the son of an African, right? He does not have. I mean, obviously, he feels that culturally,
you mean the slave history.
He does not have a direct connection to slavery in the United States. That connection breeds, as it should, an enormous amount of resentment. I mean, to know that your great-great-grandfather, was potentially owned by the guy sitting next to you in the Senate is not an easy thing to get over. And I think that still definitely disturbs people. Yes. And I think that this was one way to achieve this goal of progress, while at the same time sort of inoculating, if I can sound smart, to sort of reference Roland Barthes.
Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome, graduates. Sort of inoculating the opponents against this, to sort of say, well, look, yes, he's black, but he doesn't carry the same scars. And obviously, look, there's a cultural scar. There's no doubt that it's still there, but it is not the same. I mean, as Jesse Jackson not being elected president, or not even making
the least angry black man in America type argument.
Absolutely, that's exactly where it could
Would you agree with Jon Stewart then that the Hillary Clinton Barack Obama contest was a contest between two white men?
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I think that it was unfortunate to see what happened, because Hillary Clinton, in what she was outlining and what her platform was far more progressive than Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton wants to change healthcare in America. Barack Obama has no record of wanting to change healthcare in America. But Shepard Fairey designed a much better poster.
Yeah.
It's like why white people would vote for Che Guevara.
He had a good photo.
Yeah. White people like stuff that looks good on a T-shirt. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, is that what? That actually explains a lot.
Well, what international concern is up there with white people? Darfur, why? Fantastic T-shirt. Heroes, Che Guevara, fantastic T-shirt.
Okay.
Barack Obama, fantastic T-shirt. Indie music, fantastic T-shirts.
Are white people in Australia the same as white people in America?
There are a lot of similarities, but man, white people in Australia like jogging way more than white people in America.
Really?
Americans have the good sense to drive somewhere before they start jogging. We do it on treadmills.
Right, yeah.
And it is out of control.
You got very big cars.
Yes, we do.
That would be addictive.
Well, we have Priuses.
Yeah.
The wrong kind of white people have very big cars. We have Priuses.
Right.
And I think
of course, yeah.
And
sorry.
I think that
I'm not being nuanced.
No, it's. I mean, I'm offended, but it's fine. I mean, you literally implied that I have a big car, which is.
But isn't being offended a white people thing?
Hey, it's 103. Yeah. I don't even have a car. I ride a bike. So
that's extremely
what
white.
you just implied to me is pretty much the most offensive thing you could have said to me. So
yeah,
I mean, look, I'll finish the interview, but I'm not happy.
Okay.
And also, I don't know what country produces black lycra. Hopefully it's Australia, because the number of people wearing black lycra pants that I've seen here is off the charts. But otherwise, it's very, very similar from the areas that I've been. And the thing that I've noticed about Melbourne is, are there any neighborhoods in Melbourne that aren't currently being gentrified?
Yeah, but see,
I feel like it's all of them, because I think that Melbourne must have been like Dresden in 1993.
No, but what you need to understand is that in a lot of cases, it's us doing the gentrifying.
Yes.
It's not the white people.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes it even more interesting than white people.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very good. Can I ask one final question?
Yeah, of course.
Do white people like writers' festivals?
Writers' workshops.
Not writers' festivals.
Well, writers' festivals they like, but the reason they like writers' workshops more is because there's the potential that they could get discovered at a writers' workshop.
Right, okay. Thanks for the chat.
Oh, wonderful.